We held the line, and the Franciscans were a huge part of that.
Through their prayer?
Everything.
Or through...
Yeah,
what
they
did they
weren't
do physically?
But they didn't leave. So the sacraments were always there.
Okay.
They sacrificed their life.
And so a lot of them would have been killed.
Oh yeah, and recently as post Second World War, like in one town we have, like in Herzegovina, and this is where we don't know, and I don't claim this. So is that there were 60 Franciscans that were murdered right near Medjugorje. So the blood of martyrs is there. That's not even a question. That is beyond reasonable doubt.
Yep.
And the reason why we have Saint Joseph in the Eucharistic prayer is because a bishop from that region, when he was talking at the Second Vatican Council, he was beaten by the communists.
Wow.
So he had a stutter. And when he was talking, now Saint Pope John the 23rd was listening to him and was disgusted at the response he got from other cardinals and bishops, because they sort of mocked and teased him, but they didn't know his story.
Okay.
But he knew his story.
Wow.
And it was because of what he shared, not of his story, but he was a man of God. He was willing to die for his faith.
Wow.
He was almost beaten to death, and that had a physical effect on him. And because of what he shared, and it's in the consecration book that Father Donald Calloway put it together.
Yep.
It's out of that literally within 3 days, Pope John the 23rd included that in the Eucharistic prayer. So there's a lot of precursors in that region prior to Medjugorje even being a thing. And I'm not even talking of the apparitions, just the place of pilgrimage.
Yep.
That's what doesn't surprise me when I've learned about our history.
Yep.
It truly is the blood of martyrs. Like, imagine having 60 Franciscans murdered.
Yep.
And we're not a big people. We're not a big population. Mm-hmm. I've been told it's the greatest murder of priests, and there was more per capita in the world.
Wow.
So they really tried to kill the faith.
And obviously it didn't.
It did the opposite. Communism fell, as we know.
Yeah. And what's the faith like now in Croatia? Like, in terms of if you were just to give a general bird's eye view scope on it, like the way that I would say in Australia, people are like the Catholics are nominally Catholic. You probably get about 10% church attendance. People are mainly, in Australia, they're not even devotional. What's it like with the Croatian community? Because I don't know, I've noticed a bit of a resurgence, or not even a resurgence. I've just noticed like a lot of practicing Croatians coming out of nowhere, but maybe because I don't know, I've never met or I've never known that they've been around. But with, like, for example, the Maronites, it was almost like if you were within the Catholic community, a practicing Catholic, it's almost like you knew, the Maronites, they're the defenders of the faith. But I feel like I'm now experiencing the same thing with the Croatians, where the Croatians they're the ones that are fighting for the faith. They're the ones that are showing up at a lot of the events. And
there's a reawakening. So for Croatia, what I would say is the attack is like it is in Australia, because it's a worldwide movement. You know, we can talk about these pride events. They do the same attack
over there.
It's the same sort of tactics. They're even more militant in the attacks.
So are there, like, you know how we've got like woke people here?
Oh, absolutely.
Are there a lot of woke people in Croatia?
Yeah, asleep. Yeah, but it's different. If you go to Croatia and anywhere in Croatia, within 5 minutes you'll see that it's a Catholic nation.
Okay.
Because of
statues.
Very devotional.
Yes.
Love Our Lady.
Yep.
And I think she has helped us immensely. Croatia back in the 1600s, first nation in the world.
Yep.
And this is in the constitution, declared Saint Joseph the patron of Croatia. Officially.
Wow.
Predates what the church did by, in some cases, centuries.
Wow.
So we've got great intercessors, and the blood of martyrs.
Wow.
The blood of martyrs, I think, is, like I say, 60 Franciscans murdered, and it's horrendous. what's come from that is amazing. So in terms of vocations,
Yep.
there's always vocations.
Yep.
And that's what's, like the Jesuits in Croatia are so strong, so beautiful.
In terms of their
Fidelity to
adherence
the church,
faith and fidelity
orthodoxy.
to church teaching.
Yeah.
So they're different to the rest of them.
My goodness.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, totally different. So our Franciscans, Salesians, Dominicans.
So your Jesuits don't have the same stigma?
Not at all. The complete opposite.
Are they formed in different seminaries?
Very well formed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, look, we obviously know some of the things here and
in America
States.
or anywhere, like everywhere.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Wow.
Totally.
Wow. All right, Ivica, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Well, we've been talking now for a little bit, so we'll just continue. Ivica, I've got you on the show because you have been very involved in men's ministry. You're working for the Archdiocese at the moment. I remember just getting a random phone call, I think, from you a while back, just regarding, because you knew that I was a part of the Knights of the Immaculata and trying to get us involved in becoming involved and meeting other people who are parts of men's ministry. But let's go before that. Can you just tell us about about your story, a little bit about how maybe a little bit about yourself, a bit of your background, family makeup. I know you got beautiful wife and 6 kids.
7
kids. Oh, wow. Is that number 7 a recent addition? Or?
She's 2.5.
Oh, 2.5. Okay, 7. I must have miscounted in a photo, unless the photo had 6. I can't remember. I just thought I counted 6. Anyway, go for it.
Born and raised here locally in Sydney. My joke normally is I wasn't born in Australia. I was born in Auburn.
Okay.
So brought up as a cultural Catholic.
Yep.
In short, I have one older sister who's 3 years older. My father came out by boat in 1969. Classic story for a better life.
Yep.
It was communism, and if you were in any way a practicing Catholic and weren't part of the communist system, you're never going to get a job or ahead. He had an uncle here, and he thought, why not? And came over by boat, and back then it took 6 weeks to come over. So he did that, and then about 3 years later, he had time to settle. He wanted to get married, and there was, if you like, and he didn't know a word of English, there was a shortage of Croatian women here. So he wrote a letter to his mother, said, can you find me a wife? And she wrote a letter back and sent him the details of a young lady that she didn't know, but got her details. So my mother and father started letter writing to each other, and through those letters, my father asked her, would you come to Australia and marry me? And that happened.
Wow.
And they met for the first time at the airport.
Wow.
And are still happily married to this day.
Wow.
So that's the story of my parents. Yeah.
And so, moving on to yourself, then, you grew up culturally Catholic.
Yes.
When did that change?
Yeah. So I got married, and I was 24, and I wasn't still very much a cultural Catholic. My wife, 1 year younger, also a cultural Catholic, same background.
Yep.
Our conversion story or reversion story is one of fertility. It might sound that was a huge trigger point. We basically got told we would never have children. So going 3 years into our marriage, it wasn't happening. It didn't happen, and then we went through a whole bunch of tests.
Yep.
And as you do, you start asking a lot of questions.
Yep.
Why me and why us? Everyone else around us was having babies, and I was like, so that had a huge impact on us. And I remember the day when the lady, after many tests, said to us that looked us in the eye and said, you will never have children naturally. And for some reason, we left together and we looked at each other and we didn't believe her. And I can't tell you why.
Yep.
I don't know why. But the promise, this was my cry of prayer, and I didn't realize what was going to come of this. I said to God, if you give me children, I will do anything.
Yep.
They were my words.
Yep.
It was a true cry.
Wow.
And he's never let me forget.
Yep.
So that was a big anchor point. And if I fast forward, my wife shared with some other people that she was struggling because she was desperate.
Yep.
She was a lot more emotional than I was, and she sought prayers. And then someone said, look, there's Father Luke at Hunters Hill, and he has the gift of tongues, and he can pray over you.
Yep.
I didn't know what gift of tongues was. I didn't know what it meant to pray over someone. And she asked me, and she was open to it. I said, okay, well, if you think it's okay, I'm okay with it. So she took a day off work, and she went. And she came back, and she said, I went. I said, how was it? She said, it was good. He prayed over me. He said some sort of gibberish. She didn't know how to explain it.
Yep. And
he said to me, this was like late in the year. He said, everything's going to be okay. I can see you have some issues with some cysts and on your left side and this. And he pointed some things out. And she was like, wow. He said, go see this Catholic doctor and you will conceive in Feb. Like, what do you mean? This can't be. So, and that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
My firstborn son was born on November 5, exactly as, God rest his soul, the late Father Luke said.
Wow.
And I never met Father Luke.
You never met him?
Never met him. My wife, that was the only encounter she had with him. And I've heard some stories since, and I just think, wow. And that was our miracle story.
Okay.
So since we've had 10 babies, 3 that didn't make it, lost in miscarriages, and 7 beautiful children here with us today.
Yep. And so then where does the story go from there?
It just got harder and harder. It had firstborn son, secondborn son, and from the outside, everything looked dandy. Me, the husband, 2 sons, beautiful wife,
yep,
beautiful house, good job.
What were you doing?
I was working for Coates Hire, and
Okay.
I got into the sales side of the business, and I was doing quite well and climbing the ladder, and I was very keen to climb the corporate ladder.
Yep.
And that was moving.
Mm-hmm.
But deep down, I wasn't happy. There was something missing. I thought, oh yeah, got married and have the kids now.
Yep.
And God, reminded me of my cry out to him, of my prayer.
Yep.
I will do anything if you give me children, because that's what I said.
Yeah.
And that's where St. John Paul the Great comes into it and introduces my wife to theology of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes home.
How did that happen?
So someone who had in our community a reversion due to that as well was so keen and started sharing programs.
Yep.
And had 5-week and 8-week programs, and my wife decided to sign up.
Were you going to Mass on Sundays with the family at this point? Or so what's cultural Catholic that you grew up with? Because that's probably different from my experience of cultural Catholic, because I kind of grew up in a sort of a cultural Catholic where it was kind of like the occasional Sunday Mass going for a little bit during when I was kind of young. Then once I hit high school, I didn't go. Mm-hmm. And we'll kind of like a Easter, Christmas kind of go to church kind of a family up until I stopped going. What was that like for your community or for you growing up?
Yeah, so for me as a young fella, and I'm going to say young fella, like let's say 7, 8 and under, I don't remember going to Mass.
Okay.
And I do know by speaking to my parents, it wasn't every Sunday.
Yep.
And then it started to increase where they were going every Sunday.
Okay.
So there was this period of time, me as a young boy, 10-year-old, through to my mid-teens, going every Sunday.
Yep.
And then I fell away totally from that. And I started going out and coming home late and partying. And so I didn't attend Mass. But my wife was always the one, when we got married, let's go to Mass. Mm-hmm. So that became a cultural thing of going to Mass. But I didn't understand what was going on. I wasn't against it.
Yep.
But it just there was a lot of questions there.
Okay.
So by the time the two sons were around, we were going to Mass.
Okay.
Sunday Mass, definitely.
Confession.
Confession not as often for me.
The sacraments and things like that, or just going to Mass?
Going to Mass and my confession was, and it's a cultural thing in our community, Christmas and Easter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have huge confessions where, 10 priests come, they give us the times, and just hundreds of people come through. And so I did that. I stuck with that tradition.
And so what happened in this encounter with your wife and this person about the program?
So my wife, what she did was she started to write letters. And if you want to ever get to someone's heart, sometimes letters are more powerful than even having a discussion.
Yep. So
she did that. She poured out her heart.
Yep.
And it was for the first time in my life. I'll take one step back. 2008 was the World Youth Day in Sydney.
Yep.
So I'm at that time, I'm 30 years old. My wife's 1 year younger than me, two sons, and I wanted to do so much. Yep. So I volunteered. I did as much as I could. And that promise came back to me. Yep. That my cry to God. So I was like, okay, I will serve. Just tell me how.
Okay.
So my formation was really poor, but all sort of at the same time, my wife was starting to share with me through letters and talking what love is. And it's the first time in my life that I heard that love is not a feeling, that love is a decision. Yep. Love is to will the good of the other.
Yep.
All these things. And I was like, I got angry.
Yep.
And I was angry because why didn't anyone tell me this? I couldn't sleep. I literally couldn't sleep.
Wow.
So deep dive, me being the fanatic I am, because when I played soccer, I was fanatical about soccer. Okay. When I watched soccer, I love it. I got right into it. So I just started reading books and listening and non-stop.
Were you given suggestions by anyone, or was this a go-to person in the faith that you were kind of being guided by, or was it just all yourself?
No guide. Well, yeah, God was looking after me and my guardian angel. Yeah. There was an encounter I had at work with a client, an ex-Maronite. Okay. Robert. Please pray for Robert.
Yep.
Continue to pray for his reversion. He was a Maronite, but he entered the Hillsong Church. Okay. Left the Maronite church, if you like. And he was a managing director of a company. And I took him out to lunch. Yep. And we really got along. And he would talk about God and ask me questions. I had no idea how to answer him. And I remember after taking him out to lunch, so I picked him up and I got back to his office and we've sort of parked in the driveway. He's opened the door and he said, "Oh, thank you, that was lovely." He said, and he turned and looked at me, and all his workers are walking past. There's a hype of activity, but he wasn't fazed. He said, "Do you want to pray?" And I didn't know what to say. I was gobsmacked. I said, "Okay." So he put his hands out like this. So he's in the passenger seat. I'm here. And so I put my hand out and he grabbed my hand and he prayed from his heart.
Yeah.
And he left. And I was like, wow, I need to investigate. And what I ended up doing was I become the number one customer at Coorong.
At the Christian bookstore?
Yep. I said, I want you to prove that the Catholic faith is not the one true faith. I knew some basics. Things were coming to me. So I started reading books on ex-Catholics. I started reading the marriage prep programs that they've got. And I saw a huge gaping hole, which I couldn't believe. The ache in my heart was still aching. I said, I don't know how I recognized it, but I said, this is not it. I wasn't talking to anyone. I was just reading. I went to the Bukhari bookstore, Islamic bookstore in Auburn, started reading up on Islam. I want to find out who Muhammad was. Does he have something good to say? And there was just this gaping hole with all of this. And providentially, I came across Sharbel Reish when he was not where he is now. I remember the location in mind. I can picture it. I can't remember the name of the street. And I pretty much listened to every CD. Okay. I deep dived.
Okay. So you came across some Parousia Media stuff?
Yes.
And then you started to...
Conversion stories.
Okay.
You mentioned Scott Hahn's name to me, and I fell in love with Scott and Kimberly Hahn.
Okay. It's interesting. That's like Scott Hahn has, I think, played a role in a lot of people's conversions, especially from a like a convincing theological kind of point of view for people who are kind of stepping. He really has a really good way of explaining some very hard truths in a very simple way.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one like 6 CD volume of like about why we don't believe in the Bible alone. I can't remember if that's the name of the series, but that was a really deep one that I listened to. And so what happened after that?
So all this coupled with my wife writing me letters, sharing what she's learning, and I had a friend who passed away. He literally dropped dead 1 week before it was scheduled to get married. And he was...
You know why?
26. Found out later he had a hole in the heart.
Wow.
He didn't know.
Okay.
It was on autopsy. And he went for a walk and just shorts, T-shirt and joggers and a bit of a run and walk, and had no mobile, nothing on him. But he didn't return home during the day. So obviously they went out, and he dropped dead around the corner from home and just died instantly.
Wow.
And so to paint the picture, I'm 30 years of age. I've never prayed the rosary in my life, ever. And I wanted to pray the rosary.
Yeah.
And I was up in the Newcastle Hunter region with my, I'll say, young family. We went just for a day trip out, and I found out he passed away, and I couldn't believe it. And I wanted to pray the rosary, and I can't even tell you why. I wanted to pray the rosary.
Yeah.
Didn't have rosary beads, and I was too scared to ask my wife
to pray.
Yeah. I was ashamed. Like, who am I to ask her to pray? So going down the highway, the F3 as we used to call it, I'm trying to muster up the courage to ask her to pray.
Yeah.
And I eventually do. And she's like, I already prayed it. In her mind, I didn't know.
What, the rosary?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was like a huge slap to me of, you don't know what you're doing. You're worthless.
About yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
I felt like nothing. I felt totally unloved.
Wow.
And no purpose. And that is why I started to pray the rosary.
And had you ever... So you're saying that you had never prayed it before that?
Never.
But did your wife pray it regularly at home, or like...
She started to pray more and more. She was definitely the catalyst.
Okay.
But it wasn't something that was visible. She didn't sit there and have the rosary beads out, but she definitely prayed more. She started to pray through the fertility issues.
Yeah.
And I found out, obviously, many years later, a whole bunch of things that she did and offered up, and been graced to see the fruits of that. Wow. And her offering up her suffering. So I guess like part of the fertility was huge because, you know, to go into some of the technicalities, my wife has got this thing, polycystic ovaries, irregular menstrual cycle, 3-4 cycles a year. You know, the chance for her to fall pregnant was really minimal, and all that type of thing. So for the first time in my life, I believed in miracles.
Okay.
I'm like, my son is a miracle. But the death of a friend prompted me to pray the rosary. Okay. I can't even put it into words, but that was my response to hearing about his death. And I've shared that with his family and with his brother, and it's been a great blessing. Okay. Out of such a tragedy, that something good has happened. Yep. But really the rattling point now was, okay, I made a promise to God, if you give me children, I will do whatever you want. So he was healing me and purging me, and I was reading books on addiction, trying to become a better man. And my wife was sharing with me what love is, and then that was all the anger, and that was that like purging effect that I had. I was angry at schools. I was angry at my parents. I was angry at everyone. Why didn't anyone ever tell me that love is a sacrifice? Love is to will the good of the other. I thought if it feels good, you do it.
Yeah.
So I had to change my whole life, and I didn't know how and what.
And how many kids had you had by this stage?
2 sons.
2.
Yeah.
And so then what changed after that?
Radical turn to prayer.
Okay.
When I say radical, it's not that. I just started to pray.
And did you have, with the help of the books that you were reading and what you were listening to and the formation that you were getting, did you have now a foundation of mass, confession?
It's all starting to happen.
It's all starting to happen?
Yes.
Okay. And where does it go from here? Like, how old are your boys? And
so they were quite young, essentially, let's say 3 and 1 and then 4 and 2.
Yep.
And all they ever remember is, and thanks be to God, that we prayed as a family.
Awesome.
Because they got limited sort of memory of that.
Yep.
And we just turned to prayer.
Mm-hmm.
We turned to prayer, and I just wanted to pray.
Yep.
And I got really zealous in my faith.
Mm-hmm.
And this much probably links in why further down the track I'm so passionate about men's ministry, because I was alone.
Okay.
I felt like I had no one to help me, and that I couldn't tell anyone.
Yep.
And I couldn't speak to everything. Well, I couldn't share everything with my wife, not because I didn't want to. I didn't want to burden her. It would have been great if I had, brotherhood, fraternity. I didn't have a biological brother, and I felt like I couldn't tell any of my family, friends and cousins, because what I saw was they were just deep into this world.
Yep.
So I thought I would have to leave where I was living. I said to my wife, I have to leave. We have to start fresh.
Where were you living at the time?
In Barella.
Yep.
A beautiful community, and we loved it. I said, well, I can't. How can I stop drinking and having fun with these guys and doing this? I can't. I just need to cut it all.
Yep.
But it was very evident that in our prayers and discernment was, no, you're called to be here.
Okay.
And it's not what I wanted to hear. I want to hear something else.
Okay.
But I said, okay. And I can't say there was one moment. There was just many moments. So I dived deep into theology of the body.
Yep.
And I laugh at myself when some people have called me the rosary guy. I'm like, I prayed my first rosary at 30.
Yep.
I'm not ashamed of that. It just is. But I laugh at myself what God has done. I could never have imagined that I would work for an archdiocese, or that I would talk to someone like yourself on something like this. I still sort of pinch myself and go, okay, it's in your hands.
Wow. And so are we skipping much if I was to ask you, where does the men's ministry job with the Archdiocese come along, or is there a bit of a story in between? No,
we can certainly, it would make sense, I think, if we go there. It might give some further
because
perspective.
You were saying that you weren't happy in your role or in your job. Did that continue? Did you end up leaving there and trying to find something else to do that you would probably think was a bit more fulfilling?
Well, in terms of my profession, things were going well. It was paying the bills, and I ended up staying at Coates High for 20 years.
Wow.
And really good people. It was a really sort of macho type of culture, very boys club, and I got included right into that boys club.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was changing, there was things that were conflicting with me, but thanks be to God, it somehow worked out.
Okay.
The culture was changing at work as well as I was changing.
Okay.
And
was there a lot of drinking? And
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, part of my job in business development was taking out clients, having drinks with them, taking to dinner, go to the box, go to other establishments. It was that's what it was. That was expected.
Go to the what? Sorry, the bot?
Sorry, corporate box.
I'll go to corporate boxes.
Corporate boxes, things like that.
Football games and
all the different codes.
Sounds like a fun job.
Well, at the start, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And as I grew my faith, and I'll say it, I became overzealous. I was confused how I juggle this and my faith.
Okay.
And that's why I wanted to leave where I was living. I was like, the only way I can clear myself of this is to leave.
Yeah.
Because I feel like telling everyone that they're being wrong.
Okay.
So it was certainly a purging process. But that's where the passion came well, for men, and to certainly help men, because I was isolated, and it's truly by the grace of God. I feel like I'm a miracle that I pulled through.
What parish were you attending at this time?
At the Croatian Catholic Centre at Summerhill.
At Summerhill,
yeah.
And so, did you try to become more involved there? Did you put your hand up to do some sort of sort of a youth ministry kind of guy? Or
I tried, but there was, if you can picture this, a migrant community, and there was nothing to do there. The parish, so to speak, was dead.
Yep.
It was the older generation going, culturally going, and God bless them, they're lovely.
Yep.
Many of them didn't know their faith. It was just cultural. It was devotional.
Yep.
There was no catechesis, no formation.
Yep.
At that time, we were the only young or middle-aged family that were attending Mass. My children were the only children at Mass every week.
Wow.
So I speak about that because in our discernment, it was very clear. God said, "Don't leave."
Okay.
And I don't even know why, but He said, "Stay."
Yep.
And we were obedient, and I think I know He's blessed that, yes, beyond measure. I mean, what has certainly gone on in our community, again, I'll say it's nothing short of a miracle. And I'm not attributing it to my family, but I saw it.
But you've seen the change.
There was no First Holy Communion. There was no sacraments for children. There was only cultural baptisms.
Yep.
From people that don't go to Mass.
Yep.
And don't go to Mass there. And there was weddings.
Yep.
And there was funerals. And all of that came back. And so I got involved in catechesis, in sacramental prep, then the youth ministry.
How did that start?
Another person in our parish was getting on fire.
Yep.
And we took that on.
Completely separate journey to yourself?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And we took that on with the blessing of our priest, and away we went. And
so you had a discussion with him and said, we'd like to start something here at the parish?
Yes.
Okay.
And we had a new parish priest, so it was sort of, I guess it was God's timing, and he said, yeah, do it.
And so what did you suggest to him that you wanted to do?
We said, well, we think we should offer, we know a lot of the children might go to Catholic schools and local parishes. Being a migrant chaplain, it's very unique.
Yep.
But we think we should offer these sacraments here, and it's important for people in the parish, in the pews, see new life.
Yep.
They're not seeing new life, then it's a problem.
Yep.
And he agreed, and we started, and it's.
And what did you start with? Did you start with like a sacramental program for Holy Communion or for reconciliation or for
both?
Confirmation?
We joined the first reconciliation and Holy Communion.
Yep.
My eldest son, he was part of the first class.
Wow.
So that was a driver, and we kicked off.
And where did you have programs that you went by?
Yep. God provided everything. I can't even. It's difficult for me to articulate this because we were just. God was putting me in touch with people that I could never have imagined, and getting things recommended and this and vouching for this, and I was just meeting more people. So we followed that program, and I've come to learn it's one of the best programs out there.
Well, what's the name of the program?
It's really simple. It's from Cardinal Newman.
Okay. And
you can still purchase these books for $5.
Okay.
And I vouch for them. They are amazing. I've used them for confirmation, communion, and reconciliation.
Yep.
So go see Cardinal Newman.
Okay.
Bookstore at St. Mary's, and you can purchase these. Even if you think you don't know how to do sacramental prep, take these books to your children and go through it with them.
Okay.
Just simple but to the point.
Yep.
And fantastic.
And how long do the programs go for? Like, how long was the Holy Communion?
We do 2 terms.
Weekly?
Yeah.
An hour every week?
Yeah.
Okay.
With Q&A. And what I received great blessings. What ended up happening out of that? That was part of my healing as well. So here I am, and people thanking me, "Oh, good on you for doing this." And I'm saying to people, you don't know, you don't realize Thank you. Thank you for bringing your children. Thank you for entrusting us. I was getting all sorts of calls. I'd never heard of the consecration to the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Yep.
It came through the children.
Yep.
I had to, in that first year of doing this, there was a few times I had to go to the bathroom to cry. Wow. Because we would ask questions, we'd have Q&A. The children are amazing. And I know all these kids now.
Yep.
And they were saying things that they were saying but had a huge impact. And I was getting signs through them, because at the same time I read about St. John Eudes. I would in my work time I would stop at the cathedral and I'd sit there and read the Saint of the Day, read scripture, and God was talking to me, and all I was hearing was consecration. So there was so many things happening.
And
constantly.
This is at Summerhill.
This was at Summerhill.
Wow. And so how long were you there for, like doing these programs and running these classes? Did you end up with other people that wanted to help you as well? Like, did the classes get big enough, or did you just run them on your own?
So we myself and another lady run them to this day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's been one of the greatest blessings in my life.
Okay.
Greatest blessings.
Yep.
Yeah, so that continues, and I still look forward to doing that. And what's happened now is I get invited by some other parishes to do a presentation on reconciliation. I had one on Wednesday evening, and what I love is we've now gone into formation of parents that come as well. So we will do joint sessions, children and parents, and we'll do sessions with parents only. And it's amazing. The Q&A is phenomenal. When it's a space of trust, they just open up. They ask about everything.
The parents do?
Parents too.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
so you were talking about the children?
Both.
But are the parents there?
Well, we do both. We mix it up.
Okay.
So we try to give them the opportunity, and we will say to the parents, you're open to sit in on the class. Because
I know, like, in terms of the catechetical programs, because they're so young, it's very important for the parents to be on site as well.
Yes.
Because, they might know all this catechesis about the faith, but then once they have their Holy Communion, it's the parents that are going to have to take them to Mass every Sunday. So that's very important that you pointed out that the parents, they need the formation too. And so what sparked the interest in the parents? Was it the children being on fire and being so interested and wanting to come back every week? Is that what it was?
Absolutely. The number one, so in my 10 plus years of experience, and I share this with the parents, and parents are like, oh, wow. And the question goes something like this: which commandment you think is the most highlighted by the children? And parents will hazard a guess, and it's the third commandment: keep the Lord's Day holy. Because when the children find out that that's what the commandment is, they ask their parents, why don't we go to Mass on Sunday?
Wow.
And I've had children after class call their mum or dad. I don't know what they're going to ask. Their parents don't. They come over, and then I'm standing there, the child's standing there, the parent is standing there, and the child will ask in front of me, Mum or Dad, why don't we go to Sunday Mass? It's God's commandment. And I don't say it's awkward. There's a lot of silence. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I continue to see.
And what happens in those situations?
Of course, there's a bit of discomfort.
More on their end?
Yeah, absolutely. But not by the child. The children are just like, okay, this is the way it is.
Because they're innocent. They're just asking because they genuinely want to know.
Yes.
They don't understand about that whole awkward atmosphere that's probably occurring with the parents.
That's right, yeah. There's guilt. There's guilt.
But then do the parents kind of open up to you and they're like,
there's a lot of that.
We should be trying to come or go, or they never do they ever say to you, what are you telling our kids? Like, what are you talking about?
I have, and to my knowledge, when and what we say is we're going to share with you the Catholic proposal. This is the call. You may have not heard it in its fullness and beauty and truth. Once you hear it, then of your own free will, you can make a decision. And the parents are like, okay, I said, because you might have heard half-truths.
Yep.
Maybe you haven't given it time. Maybe at school they're not, sharing the fullness of it.
Yep.
And that's the premise that we start on.
Okay.
And the parents are like, okay. So in my experience, have never had a parent say, no, that's not it. That doesn't make sense. It's not logical.
Well, that's a good starter though, because it's not like you're blaming them for not going. It's like you're just saying, well, look, you probably just didn't know that you had to go every Sunday. So that's, it's not like you're attacking them.
Yeah, we're just sharing the proposal.
Yeah.
And that's, if you like, the agreement from the start.
Yeah.
That we're going to share the proposal. This is not, anyone else's teachings, but
the churches.
The church that Christ established.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are like, okay, let's go for it. So many text messages, many conversations.
Yep.
Let's catch up for coffee. Can you come to my house because I heard this, but I'd like my husband to hear this.
Yeah, well.
A lot of that.
Do you find that the women are more receptive and open and are bringing the husbands into line and bringing them on board, or are they both receptive? What do you find? What do you notice? Yeah,
I'm smiling because the pattern, if I look at the last 15 years, what I've seen is, okay, the women, but that only lasted a short amount of time. What happened in our community and what is happening still today, praise God, is that when the men fall, head over heels.
Then they fall hard.
Head over heels.
Yeah.
And it's not only 1, 2, 5, 10, 50. It's just, we're almost seeing it, I don't want to exaggerate the point, on a weekly basis, but that's how it felt.
Yeah.
I'm still, I know the phone calls and messages I receive, and men are going, wow. When that epiphany, they're just, wow. And they know they're not alone now. That's the difference. There is a community of men and men who have experienced all sorts of pains, and they're hearing that now through the men's groups. They have an opportunity, so they know that it's okay.
Is it similar? Are some of the weaknesses that are present within the culture and the community, are they similar? Like, do a lot of the men share the same, I don't know, addictions or pasts? Because I know, because I've grown up with, like, my brother was very good friends with Croatians, and I had a good friend of mine that's Croatian as well. But I know that there's a very big, like, not just drinking and party culture, but I always remember it, for example, at Punch Bowl. You know how the Croatian club was at Punch Bowl? They'd have a party on Christmas night.
Yes.
And so I thought, that's probably the worst day of the year to be having this kind of a party there. So I kind of am aware of that kind of that party kind of culture that kind of Croatians have, and just when they have it as well. So yeah, can you just speak to that, I guess? Like, so they all were coming from like these similar environments?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And I'll call it out, and I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people in our community.
Yeah.
Huge drinking problem.
Yeah.
Huge. And unfortunately a huge drugs problem.
Okay.
Right now with and I'll name it, with cocaine.
Okay.
So and I'm sure it's, well,
and
I know,
all ages?
All ages.
Yep.
Middle-aged men. It's a coping mechanism. Young men, impressionable, which then can lead to gambling, but the whole
and
drinking
gambling,
culture, huge.
Because I know with Croatians, and I know I'm being very generalized here, but I find that a lot of them are very like hardworking tradies, and so they probably got this thing about them where they think work hard, party hard, and that's where the whole drinking and the drugs and all that come in. Because I know like a lot of them are like bricklayers. They do a lot of like hard jobs.
Yeah, form work.
So it's almost like I could understand, because they also had the money.
Yes.
So I'd see them at Punch Bowl, for example, just putting in the 50s and the beers, and you know what I mean? And like, and it was, but they're very, very generous as well, and barbecues and pig on the spit and things like that at their houses and stuff like that. But I can also understand, I can see the link between the work, the gambling, the drugs, the drinking as well.
Yeah, it is. And we're certainly living with the consequences.
Yeah.
Again, I know amongst the chatter, and I know some of the men that have approached me asking, can we do something about this?
Yeah.
There is almost, it seems like a new sense of desperation. And I think that's good news, because it's coming from men who are now coming to their faith.
Yeah, good.
So they're like, okay, we need to change certain things. Yes, it's good to party. Yes, there's nothing wrong with having a drink and a meal. But when abused, it's not good. So it's almost like a purging scenario that I'm seeing, and I'm being, again, stereotypical, that's happening in our community. There's this purge going on.
But it's a good thing, though, I see, because you tend to find that the harder people are entrenched in their sin or in their bad habits, when they finally get that wake-up call, when they finally, convert, they convert hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, a lot of people that are, like, very strong and practicing now would have come off the back of some of these hard previous lifestyles and experiences, which is beautiful.
It is.
And so you have been, so I guess, can you talk about how men's groups came about after that within the Croatian community? Like, so you had the Sacramental Programs going along.
Yep.
I'm guessing you had the dads that were, like, listening to these stories and these messages opening up to you.
A few dads.
Started
to trickle
So
in.
then where does did you start the men's group?
So what happened was there was a men's group meeting out more in the western suburbs. Started at someone's home. And then they moved to Blacktown Church.
And what was the initiative there? Like how did it start? Why did it start?
Because the need big was formation. We didn't know about our faith. We knew bits and pieces, but it was disjointed. So that was you. And we knew, generally speaking, that barbecue talk, you couldn't talk about these things. So it's like we needed to create an avenue away from the family so you can openly talk about this and not have those sort of interruptions. And men speaking to each other, if they're in a safe space, they're going to open up. So that's what happened. And then maybe I was aware of this, maybe I wasn't. But I started a men's group at my place. Again, just by a few of us talking, sharing the faith. And I remember said, let's do a theology of the body program. Let's do this. And we just started doing video series and catching up every week.
Wow.
And there was just this thirst. And out of that, we discerned and said, okay, now it's time to go to our parish so more men have access to this. Because you're limited when you're in a home. It's beautiful. But... And that's exactly what happened. And the parish priest agreed, and we've been going, if you like, ever since.
What's the name of the group or the men's group? So
there's a, if you like, a Knights of the Precious Blood in the Croatian Catholic community, which doesn't have any sort of church approval. There's some things there that are happening, but again, it was to raise money mainly for orphans and different charities, because men want to do something good. And that's part of it. Men's group fraternity is really important. And then men like to do something. What can I do to help others? So we at Summerhill, we're all sort of loosely speaking under that umbrella, Knights of the Precious Blood, but we're simply linked to the parish there on the first Wednesday of the evening, and anyone's welcome to join us. And we've had all sorts of men. It's predominantly from our community, but someone will bring a friend or someone else from the local community has even joined us occasionally. And
do you have like initiatives, or do you have a certain structure or format that you go by? So, like, for example, do you have talks, or do you do breakfasts? Is there a certain, like, a routine?
Yeah, it's pretty simple for us. It starts with a bit of fraternity. So there's always a bit of finger food, and you can have a drink. And that works because it gets the guys relaxed. And we start with prayer. We have a topic for the night. So quite often it might be a short video on a particular topic. And whoever's designated leader will share a bit more about the topic, and then pose some questions, go into small groups, discuss, come back as a large group, discuss further. So that's a regular format.
And that happens at Summerhill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And similar at Blacktown's, just that it's a breakfast. Sometimes we'll have a guest speaker. So if it's a guest speaker, then they'll do their thing and have Q&A. And it's as simple as that. So it's a safe space because some of these men have not been comfortable going to Mass. It's a way of connecting with community and the church. And then many times, praise God, they've gone back to Mass.
Awesome.
And that's the whole idea, and that many of them are family men to lead their families.
And does this group or this initiative that you've been a part of, where does the idea come from now to start praying the Rosary outside of the cathedral on the first Saturdays? Is there a connection there?
Absolutely, yeah. So a number of men, we all seem to see similar images and footage, namely from Poland. And their men were praying on their knees on the first Saturday of the month out in public squares. And we saw images in the rain, in the snow, you name it. And we were just like, oh, wow. And we've come out of this lockdown, and it was like we need to do something. We need to pray. We need to come together. And it was, okay, let's do it. So on the first Saturday of December in 2021, about 35 of us went down and we prayed. And this is the part where, and I laugh because we want to do. So we prayed the one Rosary, and so I said, well, let's pray the Divine Mercy. And we ended up praying the Rosary, the Divine Mercy, and I think another Rosary. And it was like 35 degrees, scorch. But that was just out of, let's do something. And then we looked up, I've got this, and I'm not the only one. If you like, we love Our Lady of Fatima and her messages, and we read that, and it was like, wow, rereading it. And it was like, okay, she's given us the formula. She makes it easy for us. And so we follow that, and it's reparation of sins. We come in love, and it's been an amazing, amazing blessing. Like our cathedral is named in Our Lady's honour. It's the site of the first Catholic chapel in this country. It is the mother church of all Catholics in this nation. There's just so much. Not everyone can afford to go to pilgrimage to Lourdes or Fatima or the Holy Land. But you're actually making a pilgrimage if you drive or get in the car, walk, whatever you do. If you go to St. Mary's Cathedral, put a prayer intention to it, and your time driving there and going home is not a waste of time. You're making a pilgrimage. And Our Lady gave us the formula, and that's what we follow, because many of those people that are walking by, we know the Rosary scripture on beads, they wouldn't hear it otherwise. They're not walking into our churches. The amount of people that are hearing the prayers and scripture, and I know some of the conversations that are being had that people have shared with me, again, miracles. More people attending Mass at the cathedral. More people going to confession. They've extended the confession times now on Saturdays as a result in the cathedral. I'm just truly wowed.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, with the initiative, where does your job now with the Archdiocese come into all of this? So when you first started the Sacramental Program, had you started working for the Archdiocese then, or you're still working? No,
I'm new to the I say relatively new. I started in January 24, 2022. So 13 months essentially, and I never imagined working for an Archdiocese. I think I said earlier. But God has His ways, and this is where I am right now. So I work in the Life, Marriage, Family Office. And someone shared with me the position description, and then someone else called. I didn't even know the job was going. So I printed off the position description and I gave it to my wife, and I said, can you please take this to prayer. And she said, well, you just need to apply for this job. I applied, and fast forward, got offered the position primarily on dealing with men's ministry.
Yep.
And that sits within the Life, Marriage, Family Office.
Yep.
So what we're trying to do essentially is we're a network. We're just trying to connect all the active Catholic men's groups.
Yep. And so does this come from your passion for men's ministry? Is that what brought you into the role? Is that what made you want to do the role? Because you had seen the effectiveness of men's ministry up until then, and
yes.
what people were lacking, like people that had probably grown up in similar circumstances to yourself, men who, like within your own community, like probably...
Yeah, and I was seeing it outside of our community. So the number one killer of men aged 15 to 44 in this country, people might think it's cancer or road accidents or this. It's their own hand.
Yeah.
It's suicide.
Oh, wow.
It truly is a pandemic, and it's not spoken about enough. And the latest statistics that are up till now, November 2022, have shown in Greater Sydney a greater surge in suicides, and from all walks of life. So we have a problem in the church. It's not like, and we care for everyone, but the Catholic rate of suicide is like the same as the general population.
Yep.
So men in our pews are hurting.
Yep.
And can you imagine if there was, and there is other known killers, and we do, and thanks be to God that we do. We try to find cures, but this is now consistently the number one killer of men, and there just seems to be a wall of silence.
Yep.
Absolute wall of silence, and I am determined to do something about it.
Yep.
Because we need to do something about it. We
Yep.
live in an affluent nation.
Mm-hmm.
We're a first world country, and it's so sad. And these men, I've read the sociological studies, isolation is the killer, number one killer. And isolation doesn't just mean physical.
Yep.
Could be a married man, in most cases he is, wife, children, sitting in the pews every Sunday at Mass,
Yep.
but feels like his wife doesn't understand him, his children don't understand him, his parents don't understand him,
Yep.
Work pressures, financial pressures.
Yep.
He has no brotherhood,
Yep.
no true fraternity to turn to.
Yep.
The brotherhood they have is based on some sort of pub meeting or sport where, they might play sport on the weekend, but there's not, they can't open up.
Yep.
And it in many cases ends up killing them.
Wow.
And it's a tragedy. So it's a simple thing, bringing men together for fraternity in a safe space.
Yep.
Yes, we bring the prayer element, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then that organically formation happens, and you end up going with it. And these men's groups that are out there are doing amazing work.
Yep.
So it's to highlight what they're doing and to allow all the men for here in the Sydney Basin to know where they can go.
And so you believe, and I know that you're not a psychologist, but you think that there's a strong link between how these men are feeling, or how men in general are feeling with regards to this isolation and the depression and whatever it is that's leading them to suicide, and the lack of fraternity, the lack of faith. Well,
Yep.
I should say the lack of faith first.
Yes.
Lack of fraternity as well. Lack of brotherhood, lack of, prayer, knowing about a God who loves them.
Yeah, then lack of purpose.
Lack
what
of
am
purpose.
I here? Why am I here? What's all this even mean? Why am I suffering?
Yeah.
How can there be a God if I'm suffering?
Yeah.
My relationship's breaking down.
Yeah.
My marriage is not a good marriage.
Mm-hmm.
My children don't listen to me. It's all connected.
Yep.
And I'll bring another study. So what's interesting, all the sociological studies and all the different studies that are government funded, university, you name it, all point to the same thing.
Yep.
It's unanimous. So there's no sort of, we'll say there's good debate, but there's no debate. It's known that this is the issue.
Yep.
Now, the question is, what are we going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
That really is the question.
Yep.
And it was a question that came to me in my prayer, because you now are aware of this.
Yep.
You are seeing it firsthand.
Yep.
You are seeing men being healed. What are you going to do about it, Ivica? And that's the question that came to me. What are you going to do about it? You know that men are struggling, and it's not just struggle, deep struggles with heavy porn addiction,
Yep.
gambling, and we could list a whole bunch of things.
Yep.
What are you going to do about it?
Yep.
And it's not for one person to do something. And this is why we're trying to mobilize the men.
Yep.
Because the more men that come on board, as iron sharpens iron, man will sharpen man. It just... The other study I want to bring into it, and this is an Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference study prior to the Catholic Youth Festival that was had in Sydney. So off memory, I think back 2017. And why this is important is this. The number one influencer on young people, and it's the most extensive study that's been done in the Catholic Church in this space in Australia. And it covers young people from early teens right through to 30, 29, I think.
Yep.
And the number one influencer on young children is not the youth minister, is not the priest, is not teachers, not school. It's the family.
Yep.
And it's not by a little bit first, by a country mile.
Okay.
It outstrips friends, everything.
Yep.
Then you break that down. Who is the greatest influencer in the family?
Yep.
It's the father. And if you brought a consultant, and I'm being provocative, into the Catholic Church,
Mm-hmm.
and you saw this study because it's real, you would look at it and go, okay, well, we know where we need to invest.
Mm-hmm.
In men.
In fathers, in dads,
fathers.
in men. Yeah.
And we're not doing that based on the sociological and studies that we have in front of us.
Yep.
We're not doing it as a nation.
Okay.
And I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a good question. It's a good discussion.
Are we doing it as a church?
We could do a lot better.
Okay.
And the example of that is, to my knowledge, I'm the only person in all of Australia from a diocese or archdiocese level that is employed in this capacity.
In men's ministry?
In men's ministry. You have apostolates.
Yep.
Thanks be to God.
Yep.
But I'm the only person that is employed. And that shows you something.
Okay. And so since you've started, what have been some of the fruits? What have been some of the stories? What have been some of the initiatives?
The really good news is there is a recognition of this amongst the men who feel called to men's ministry and are doing something about it.
Yep.
The problem they were having, and to answer your question, is they were isolated. I've been going around Sydney meeting with these men, good men, and I share with them my struggles of men's ministry.
Yep.
And as soon as I did, they opened up.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened was, and what's happening is, these good men are burdened, if you like, with planning what's happening at the group. They're up late the night before. They execute it. They're the last to leave. They're first to get there. They set up, they clean up. And then the men who want to offload on them, offload, receive the phone calls, text messages. And it's all up to, in some cases, one man who is running a men's group.
Yep.
So the great thing here has been, what we're forming is a network of these leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And now they know they're not alone.
Yep.
Not only are they not alone, they know where these other leaders are.
Yep.
And they've already started to see their faces, and they're starting to connect. And they're seeing there's some clergy, wonderful, there's clergy that are active in men's ministry as well. And through just this network of connecting, it's organically creating a brotherhood.
Wow.
Because we're on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing huge movement. I'll give you an example. There's in Sydney, there's going to, a men's day retreat at St. Benedict's, Notre Dame. First men's day retreat held by the Dominicans. The Marists have a men's weekend retreat. And why I say it's good news, these things are happening, but other men don't know about it. And when I share this, they're like, wow, I didn't know.
So you feel like your job is to kind of raise awareness to these initiatives?
Absolutely.
Okay. So these initiatives have always been, how long have they been around for? But they just haven't been successful?
Well, they're isolated.
They're isolated.
They're doing it, so they're limited on resource.
Yep.
They're limited on time, and they try to do their best. Some have social media pages, but they're not connected in elsewhere. I was meeting men going, I'm doing this here, and I said to them, well, do you know this is happening 4 k's down the road from you? They went, no.
Okay.
Oh, well, I'm going to meet that men's leader. So then they're catching up for coffee.
Yeah, good.
They're talking.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you do? This is what we do.
Okay.
So there's, as we know, in a positive way, there's power in numbers.
Absolutely.
And that's the really, really good news.
Yeah.
Really good news. And it's now encouraging others to jump on board.
That's awesome. And can you name some of these specific initiatives that you're a part of at the moment within men's ministry? Like, I know that you were saying before, when I was trying to get a list from you of some of the initiatives, you mentioned we've spoken about the Men's Rosary Crusade, a little bit about marriage ministry, NFP, fertility and infertility ministry.
Yeah, that's if you like, something my wife and I are passionate about.
Wow.
And we, some people have heard our story.
Yep.
And people will call us and say, can we catch up with you guys?
Okay.
And we do that. So that's something that we feel called to.
Yep.
And we put some time and effort to that, and it's been a great blessing.
Is that more for couples, more for, but is there like a men's link or branch to that? Like when it comes to these kind of sessions?
That's where we will get to and need to get to.
Okay.
Because as the men's ministry network grows, and it will grow, I can see it growing.
Yeah.
You can then plug so many things in.
Okay.
I've already had a man contact me and go, you know what? I'm going to become a catechist. I'm going to do the course. We need men in our public schools and system.
Yep.
The women are great. They do a fantastic job, but it'd be great to have some men. So as this men's ministry network grows, men will they'll start to answer their call.
Yep.
But when they're not in the network and they're isolated and they're at home, watching really good YouTube videos, reading really great content, they can't move forward.
After that?
Well, because you're isolated.
Okay. And you mean isolated as in they don't have this network of people to talk to work with?
That's right. And to brainstorm with.
Okay.
And there might be an existing network that they can plug into and help, because that existing apostolate is needing hands and feet. And that's that whole thing of isolation. It comes in so many forms. So many forms. And that's why I'm just so excited with the network. And that's what the church is. We're called to community.
Absolutely.
Without community, it's...
Well, it exists as a community, because I just find that especially and I mentioned the Maronites before and the Croatians, I'm not going to say it's the only reason for this success, but I think the fact that because you have got connections culturally, it helps with the rise in the ministry itself, or within the, you know what I mean? That's not only do we go to mass together, but we share this cultural heritage. Like we're Croatian, for example, or we're Lebanese, and so it kind of makes it easier to form these kinds of groups and to get active and to get involved and so on and so forth. Would you agree with that? Or
I think there is some truth.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what I'm seeing. What's fascinating to me.
Yep.
I have had so many men approach me that I don't know. They want to become a knight. And I'm talking all backgrounds. And it's mainly come from the Asians.
Oh, wow.
Because they want brotherhood. They want to do something.
Yep.
So I'm seeking to meet with, and I'll say this, Knights of the Southern Cross and different, established groups.
Yep.
Why? to let people know about the network. I came across the Catinians. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Catinians.
No.
They're church-approved men's group from the 1930s.
Yep.
They exist here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Calyx. Have you ever heard of Calyx?
No.
They don't like me saying this, but just to paint the picture, it's a true Catholic version of Alcoholics Anonymous, but better.
Okay.
Church-approved.
Okay.
Papal documents and everything. They exist in Sydney.
Wow.
So this is the thing
Big
now.
numbers or small numbers?
They're never huge numbers.
Yep.
But like the Catinians are more widespread. And this is why I'm really open talking about this, because you have Men Alive, you have the Catinians, you have the Knights of the Southern Cross, you have Calyx, you have the Bondi Catholic Men's Group, you have the Revesby Men's Group, Catholic Men's Group, you have at St. Jerome's at Punchbowl, at St. Kevin's Eastwood, they have a men's choir with 30 men at St. Kevin's Eastwood alone, and so forth. But men don't know. The mere fact, our starting point is by men just knowing that this is on, they raise a foot straight away. It's like, wow. Then it's like, okay, I can plug into, and this is the breadth of the Catholic Church. Some are walk and talks, some are Lectio Divina, some are sacramental, some are, based on, like I say, barbecues, dinners, social.
Well, the El Camino's one.
Yes.
And we can talk about that a bit later as well.
Absolutely.
That's a big one.
So you have a plethora.
Yeah.
You have a smorgasbord. Not everyone's comfortable going out in public and pray the rosary.
Yep.
Understandable.
Mm-hmm.
So some men are called to this, some this, but they can plug in.
Wherever.
And I'm now getting calls, and they're telling me, because I'm asking them, how'd you come across, my number? By Googling. If you Google Sydney Catholic men,
yep,
the Maximus, the Archdiocesan Men's Ministry comes up.
Yep.
And my contact details. And it's good news, because I've been testing Google. We want to cast the net, and we want to capture these men. And men are calling me from the northern beaches, southern beaches, west, inner west, going, I have no Catholic fraternity, I want to plug in.
Wow.
I'm like, where do you live? What area? They tell me. I go, well, you have this.
Yep.
Oh, wow, that's only 5 minutes away. Didn't know.
Wow.
So it is moving. It's real. I know it to be real.
Yep.
And what we're trying to provide is, for clergy and laity alike, is that you may not be called to start a men's group, but understand that you can plug in to this network. Yep. And this is how. Here it is.
Yep.
So even imagine a priest who identifies 1 or 2, 5 men in his parish, great men volunteering, but they don't have male fraternity there.
Mm-hmm.
He can say, plug into the network.
Yep.
Look where you can go.
Yep. Because
I'm not in a position. We're not in a position to start something here. And I can tell you that the response has been 100% positive.
Yep.
Affirmative. And this is why I get excited about this, because it's how the early church. Jesus had the 12.
Yep.
No internet, no car,
mm-hmm.
no electricity, no money, no shoes, no mobile phone, and said go.
Mm-hmm.
We have all those things.
Yep.
So it just takes a bit of networking, and wow, watch Sydney explode.
Well, I can see one of the reasons as to why that works, because it's almost like it's a bad luck of the draw if I, for example, and I'm not like rubbishing a particular parish, I'm just using a random example. Like, let's say, for example, I'm part of a small community at Padstow, and I know that there's a church, St. Therese at Padstow, for example, and for some reason I've decided, like, I've had a conversion and I want to be active in my faith, and I just noticed that at St. Therese at Padstow, it's such a small parish, and there's not many people that are really active and vibrant in their community, but there might be a big active community at St. Luke's at Revesby, for example. So to be able to call you, or to have that contact, or even with the parish priest, that would help. So is part of your role to make priests in all the parishes across the Archdiocese aware of you being the contact when people approach priests asking them for these kinds of initiatives or this kind of fraternity?
Absolutely.
So do you network with priests as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is why I have this conversation wide and varied, because we are literally casting the net.
Okay.
And the idea is that if Mr. Smith or Father John, and I've got business cards, as simple as it is, but they have a link to go to, that's where the net is casted. We're not asking them to do more work.
Yep.
What we're saying to the parish secretary, to the pastoral council, to the clergy, you have a solution in your artillery.
Yep.
You have somewhere where to connect these men.
Yep.
And we need to speak openly. It's not critical at all. It's our reality that some parishes are small, aren't as active,
Yep.
and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the man that's come to his faith and attending the local parish is a beautiful thing. But he wants to see the church alive.
And he's hungry.
Hungry.
Yeah.
We need to feed him.
That's right.
Very, very important.
Yeah.
And then when they come to what I call anchor points,
Mm-hmm.
the anchor points are, for example, the Camino of St. Joseph, where all the men's groups in theory come together.
Yep.
Or if they feel called to come to the Men's Rosary Crusade,
Yep.
they see the church alive, men of all ages, all backgrounds, and they go, wow. So they get spiritually nourished.
Yep. And then they go.
And then they go back to their home,
Yep.
to their parishes. That's the idea.
Yep.
It's to enrich their own homes and parishes,
Yep.
not to burden them,
Yep.
to spiritually nourish.
And so, can you speak about one of these anchor points? Can you speak about El Camino? So, what's the initiative of El Camino? How did it start? What was the idea?
So it's an overnight walking pilgrimage for men.
Yep.
And the idea is that it needs to be something physically difficult, challenging as well.
Yep.
And that's why it is difficult in the sense that you don't sleep, and it's an overnight walking pilgrimage. So last year's, and it's always done on the Friday prior or closest to the Feast of St. Joseph the Worker.
Yep.
So this year, April 28,
Mm-hmm.
Friday evening to April 29. So you end up walking, loosely speaking, close to 20 kilometers.
Yep.
You start with Mass, we end with Mass, and there's a number of stops along the way. And those stops, there's a logistical, practical part to it.
Yep.
We stop at parishes, so you can have a bathroom break,
Mm-hmm.
but the Blessed Sacrament is exposed. So you go in.
At each of the parishes?
At every single parish.
Yep.
There's a short reflection on St. Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
We pray a decade of the Rosary. So you're getting spiritually fed.
Yep.
But while we're walking, we're witnessing to the world. We
Yep.
have a processional cross. We have St. Joseph, Our Lady,
Mm-hmm.
accompanying us. It's very obvious who we are. But at that time, we're not praying. And that's because it's an opportunity for men to talk.
That's right.
Fraternity. And I've seen it. I saw it in action last year, and we had some priests join us, and it was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the third annual Camino of St. Joseph.
Yep. Where will it start? Have you sorted the details out yet?
We're very close. So what I can share is we'll be going through the city, the inner city. It's going to be a great witness on Friday evening.
What time, does it start?
So the Mass in the evening will be at 8:30 p.m.
Okay.
And then we process, and we'll be stopping at, for example, at St. Benedict's Broadway,
Yep.
St. Brendan's at Annandale, and I might not be saying it, or St. Joseph's at Camperdown,
Yep.
St. Bridget's at Marrickville,
Mm-hmm.
St. Paul de Cross, Dulwich Hill,
Yep.
St. Fiacre's in Leichhardt,
Mm-hmm.
and we finish at St. Joseph's at Enfield.
Okay.
So start with Mass, end with Mass, and then it's a hot breakfast, and it's an amazing experience and connection, anchor point. So the idea here is all these different men's groups that are doing great work in their parishes, Men Alive, different apostolates, the Catinians and so forth. It's an opportunity for those who want to and can to come as one,
Yep.
as the universal church.
Mm-hmm.
And then the men, they're there and they go, wow, like I truly am not alone.
Well,
I see I'm not alone. This is amazing.
and I guess one of the beautiful things, apart from the many things that you've already mentioned, is the fact you'll probably get like a guy from Bondi and a guy from Sutherland and a guy from Blacktown that would never have met
Mossman.
Practicing Catholics,
Yes.
you know?
Punch bowl meeting Mossman,
Yeah.
literally. Happen like, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
All demographics,
Yeah.
all backgrounds, all professional backgrounds, all like the connection, and it's a true connection.
And also age.
Yes.
So young. I've seen 15-year-olds there at the last one.
There's so we share this as a open age, as in 18 plus.
Yep.
Because it is, if you like,
It's a bit
overnight
arduous.
through
Yep.
the night.
Yep.
So essentially, if you like, it's from that, and we had an 80-year-old man complete it last year, 23 kilometers.
80 years old.
Yes, and he motivated me just by being there.
Wow.
And we had a Samascan priest who was visiting from overseas. I received the call on the Friday, and the call was, "Can Father Johnson join us?" I said, "Of course he can." He came in sandals.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, see how we go. He walked the whole thing overnight, concelebrated the opening mass and concelebrated the morning mass.
Wow.
And walked the whole way.
Amazing.
In sandals that weren't that comfortable.
Yep.
So it's an amazing witness.
Yep.
You suffer a little bit.
Yep.
You go through tired phases.
But I think that's part of the point.
And when men accomplish it,
Yeah.
they are like, "I did it.
Yeah.
I can do this."
Wow.
It's almost like I can go back home to my family, and we all have tough times.
Yep.
You know, whatever it is, and children, and you're like, "I can do this."
Mm-hmm.
And you formed new connections.
Yeah.
And those connections that they formed overnight would normally, in the outside world, I think, take a year or two.
Yeah.
It's almost like expedites it.
Yep.
You come with this trust. Then people go, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm from, where are you from?" "Oh, yeah." And people open up. The men open up.
Wow.
They sort of give a mini bio, where they're working, what they're doing. And I was blessed to hear these conversations.
Yeah. And just
Men who were discerning.
Yeah.
They were walking. They were pilgrimaging.
Yeah.
So this really, really, really excites me. Like, really excites me, because it's what we need.
Absolutely. So where do people find out more information about you and about these initiatives, for people that are listening now and want to get in touch, or are probably excited and want to get involved?
So it's titled Maximus.
Yep.
So we've called it Maximus Men's Ministry Network.
Yep.
There is a Facebook page. There is a monthly e-newsletter you can subscribe to.
Yep.
So if you just Google Sydney Catholic Maximus, you'll get to the homepage, and what you'll see is one of four things. You can contact someone, being a person. You can look at upcoming events. You can connect into social media. And you can subscribe to a monthly e-newsletter. You can do any form of that in any which way, one or the other, none, all of it.
Okay.
And it's a connection point.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited about this walk, and I know that as the Knights, we've said that we wanted to come and join you guys for the Rosary Crusade, and we're definitely going to do that. I have to speak to the boss and see what he says about it, because we just got to stop making excuses and do it, because we plan a lot of our events in advance, but we're going to have to do that as well. So can you speak about the time, how long it goes for the Rosary Crusade on the first Saturday of the month? So for people who want to do that, what are they? It's at the steps of the Cathedral?
On the forecourt, St. Mary's Cathedral.
Does it start with Mass?
So I'll share the way it's done. At 1 p.m, the actual Men's Rosary Crusade starts. And the reason for that is there's Mass in the Cathedral at 12. 12 noon. Confession is available from 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who want to, on any given first Saturday, they can go to confession, they can go to Mass, and following Mass, pray the Rosary. And we follow Our Lady of Fatima's message. Is very clear. Make reparation. The intention is for the reparation of sins. There's 5 blasphemies she's identified. And we read that out. So it's very clear why we're there and why we've come. We've come clearly for that reason. Our Lady's called us. And she's called us to meditate on the mysteries for 15 minutes. So what we do for each mystery is we meditate for 3 minutes in silence. And that's, I've been told by many, one of the most powerful part of praying the Rosary in public is the 3 minutes of silence in the city.
Wow.
So obviously 3 minutes per decade adds up to the 15 minutes. So for those who want to make that first 5 Saturday devotion, they can do it there. For those who, some go to their local parish mass in the morning and then come and pray the Rosary. But every first Saturday of the month at 1 p.m. And I've had, this is something that's come to me in reflection. And what a lot of people, I think we need to be reminded about this. Australia is a Marian nation. Our patroness is Mary, Help of Christians. Our cathedral, St. Mary's Cathedral, is named in her honour. It is the first Catholic cathedral in the world to be named in her honour.
Wow.
And in 1930, it was declared a minor basilica. Wow. So the reason why I'm sharing that is to take us a couple of steps back when you shared, whether it's the Maronites or the Croats or whoever who come as one. Yes, there's some truth to that. We understand that. People, they'll mix with like-minded people, similarities. If we share the history, the Catholic history of Australia, the men of this country of faith will unite. It's very simple. Spreading the history of St. Mary's Cathedral will unite the men of this country because it's named in honour of Our Lady. It's named specifically in honour of Mary, Help of Christians. And it's the first cathedral in the world to carry that name. And it's the site of the first Catholic chapel in this country, on this land. That is significant.
Wow.
If that was shared at every parish, this is my absolute belief. If just 1 minute was shared at every parish this Sunday, that bit of history throughout the whole country, I think you would see a change in this country.
Wow.
And this provides, this is not an invite from yourself or from Ivica. This is the invite from Our Lady. We're just the mere messengers, like in this human level. So it's good news and it's exciting. So if people wonder, what can I do for my country? Our Lady's given us a formula.
Absolutely.
Very simple formula. And we follow that.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show, Evita. God bless your work. And we'll definitely be supporting you. I'm going to put a link to the ministry and all the information there. But God bless your work and keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you for having me. God bless everyone.
God bless.